One of her quotes is that if it feels good, it means it's from the devil.
She's calling them out as demonic because they originate from these other cultures.
It's racism wrapped up in this religious ideology.
Welcome, friends, to the Reiki Women podcast, an exploration into the profound depths of the system of Reiki from a Japanese spiritual perspective and how that relates to our modern lives.
We are keeping it real to Reiki's origins, challenging the New Age stereotype that things like crystals, chakras, and angels are authentic aspects of the system. I'm Bronwen Logan, and when I'm not writing best-selling books about the Japanese system of Reiki, 75,000 readers and counting, I'm here debunking outmoded Reiki myths and coaching individuals and groups through my website, Reiki with Bronwen.
And I'm Michaela Daystar, lead teacher and weaver of Heartscapes Reiki, connecting the dots between Reiki and environmental and social justice, because our individual healing cannot be extracted from healing relationship with the collective and with the land.
And I'm Carrie from the Reiki Healing Society, here to help you transform your Reiki practice into a thriving, prosperous business. Because while passion fuels your purpose, it's time to make it sustainable, authentic, and beautifully you. We're three women diving into the heart of Japanese Reiki. We're building a community that centers women's voices and inspires well-being. We're not just for women, we're for everybody. Come join the conversation.
Welcome back to the Reiki Women podcast, and it's me, Bronwen, and Carrie, and Michaela. Hi, guys. Oh, we're feeling ready for this one today, and wished we'd recorded the last half an hour of our discussion, because we're going to talk today about something that's been happening on the internet, and it is by a woman called Doreen Virtue. Now, I actually went to a Doreen Virtue talk in the early 2000s here in Sydney, Australia. And she had hundreds of people at this talk. And it was fun, but it wasn't really me. It wasn't really what I was into. But I have to say, I've always loved her cards. And I used to, with my kids, play with, she had angel cards and mermaid cards and dolphin cards. And they were just fun to play with and to get a positive kick out of life, because they were always positive sentiments, things that made you think a little bit more about your life and where you're at, and yeah, really enjoyable.
Bronwen, are you referring to Oracle decks by Doreen
Thank
Virtue?
you. Oh, and there were unicorn ones, and they're beautiful, really pretty, sparkly, lots of colors. So I remember that about her. And in the actual talk, she did say that she divorced her husband because he didn't tell the fairies in the garden to get out of the way when he went mowing one day. This was sort of the field that she was in and the things that she was interested in. So what's happened is that in 2017, she's had an evangelical conversion. And now she has said that all of these things, all those lovely cards and thoughts, that they're all something to do with the devil. Yeah, they're satanic. Even the sparkly unicorns are there to confuse us. And it's actually the devil sparkling at us and trying to draw us into some sort of devilish sort of world. Yeah. So, yeah, that's a little disappointing. But even more disappointing is the fact that she's really having a go at the system of Reiki. And she is saying, I was a Reiki master, okay? And that terminology is not something that I would use. And that she is saying that it is a sign of the devil, or I'll find some quotes for you, but that's basically where we're at. So she's been writing lots of stuff. She's selling books about it. Yeah, so you can buy a book from her, like you could the cards, and the book will actually tell you why the system of Reiki is so bad. Unfortunately, she's off on the wrong foot, because what she's talking about as the system of Reiki is not actually something that I recognize as the system of Reiki. Yeah, she's totally against the New Age movement. I am not against the New Age movement, but I can tell you it is not a part of the system of Reiki. And in that, and Michaela brought this up. Thank you, Michaela. This is sort of funny. We can agree. We can agree with Doreen Virtue on that.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, we've already ranted for 45 minutes before we started recording. Yeah, there's so many layers to this conversation, and we're like, how do we like focus this in? So there's this, first of all, the affronted feeling of this is something we've dedicated our lives to, something that she had dedicated her life to in part. And now, she's very publicly saying not only is, the system of Reiki like not effective or not a real thing or whatever, but that it's like of the devil, right? A very, very, very bad thing. And those of us who, really carry the lineage of this practice in a particular way, we did feel we wanted to have a bit of a conversation about it. And it's an onion with layers. It's just so many layers when you start unpacking it. So I just wanted to name some of the things that came to mind most strongly for me to help me frame what we're talking about here. And first is that I frequently will talk with students or clients who do come from a Christian background, oftentimes some form of evangelical or more fundamentalist Christian perspective that they've moved away from for one reason or another, but they still hold some parts of that dear, right? They might still hold a relationship with Jesus. They might still carry the teachings, but they've moved away from the formalization of the church for whatever reason, a lot of reasons. And they've, for whatever reason, made their way to Reiki. And there's this tension that they're feeling between these systems of thought. And there is a common concern that the system of Reiki is evil, that it's bad, that it's part of a lie, falsity that's out in the world there to trick people away from Jesus. And I don't, excuse you. My kitten is of the devil. She is making noise on our podcast. I don't carry those beliefs, so I don't carry that tension. So it's always interesting being in those conversations. But my teaching partner does come from a fundamentalist Christian background, and he can have these conversations in a way that I can't. But so often it really comes down to these people are really seeking something that feels spiritually meaningful. They feel like that might be present in Reiki, and they are concerned that that is going to put them in conflict with other things that are spiritually meaningful to them. And I really respect and feel the tension of that. Oftentimes, we are able to talk about Reiki and share about what it is and what it isn't in a way that brings them peace, that helps them to actually reconcile these things together and bring them together in their practice, or at least calm down the worry. And working with Reiki from the perspective of its origins, as we do, makes it much easier to do that because it's much more rooted in something that feels more concrete and more real, and that is less tangled up with all different things. And so, as you said, Bronwen, one point of agreement that we do have with Doreen Virtue is that she points out that New Age practice of all kinds is very culturally appropriative, pulls together things from all kinds of different religions and cultures and stirs them all up and puts a new name on them and doesn't give you a lot of context. And that is something that we have spoken about as problematic. That confuses things, it muddies the water, it disrespects the cultures that these are from, and it dilutes what, in our case, the system of Reiki actually is. So we agree on that. But where we disagree is why it's a bad thing. Because for her, it's a bad thing because all of these different things that are brought together that are appropriated from other cultures, they're all from the devil. They're all taking us away from the truth and the light.
One of her quotes, Michaela, is that if it feels good, it means it's from the devil.
Oh, poor honey.
So
she's just living her life feeling bad all the time? Is that what she's saying?
And then, of course, it would be the other side of that. And Carrie was talking about this before.
First of all, I was born and raised in a fundamentalist Christian culture. So all of this, I'm sure I'll have a good conversation with my therapist at some point about this podcast episode and the slew coming from Doreen Virtue. But so much to say. But so much of this fear and anxiety about other people's religious and spiritual beliefs is really rooted in spiritual trauma. like long-standing, generational by generational spiritual trauma. Because for whatever reason, the way Christianity has evolved, and it specifically really extreme forms of Christianity that are out there saying things like I grew up under, or if you had sex before you get married, you're going to hell. You know, you get a divorce, you're going to hell. And you know, any little thing like you know, you like covet somebody else's marriage or home or anything, you're going to hell. It was really, I think a lot of it was like these sexual innuendos, like just a complete sexual repression and anxiety about sexuality, which is unfortunate too, considering this is just one of the fundamental aspects of being alive is sexuality, which, causes procreation and allows, our species to continue forward. I was raised under saying things like the earth, according to the Bible, the earth was created in 7 days. All evolutionists are wrong. All scientists are wrong. If you don't believe that the earth is 5,000 years old, then you're going to hell. And so it's just blindly follow this book that was written by men thousands of years ago. And that is really like, it has analogy, it has myth, it has story. And also, what I've often told people who've, grappled with these questions too, is that I don't think of Reiki as being anything different than the Holy Spirit. It is the Holy Spirit. It's just something that is different and it comes from a different culture. So it's automatically flagged as we shouldn't trust that. We don't know that. We're worried about that. It probably is from the devil. And then there's this insane notion that the devil is in our thoughts and in our brain and in our sexuality, and it just that there's this God out there that is literally sitting up there in heaven counting out every thought that you've thought, every transaction you've done, everything you've done right or wrong. And it's a really painful and toxic mentality, and other thing I want to say about it is also it's racism. It's racism wrapped up in this religious ideology that says something about how my religion and my belief system, because I am reinforced by this person or that person or my pastor, is somehow better or right than what your belief system is. And it's really ignorant to the depth of different spiritual cultures, including yoga, including mindfulness, including meditation, including Buddhism, and how Reiki comes from many different forms of Japanese spirituality, which this woman obviously knows nothing about.
It's uneducated. She's not educated about something that she is informing people about and writing books about and selling books about. And yet she actually doesn't know what she's talking about. If she had bothered to actually research the system of Reiki and then have a critical thinking piece about the differences or what, but instead it's just a way of, I like that you said racism. It's a cultural, what would you call that? Well, it's culturally insensitive to think that she's putting down all these other things. I have here an A to Z list of New Age practices to avoid. She calls this New Age, right? This is by Doreen Virtue. I'm not going to read them all out, but one of them is astrology. Astrology isn't really New Age, and maybe someone else can speak to that here. Reincarnation. These just come from different religions, and religions that are much older than her form of evangelical Christianity. Meditation, mindfulness, these things, once again, very old practices. Shamanism, paganism, these things predate religion, right? Smudging. There's something, she is an American, and that is a Native American tradition.
Yeah. Just the layers of misunderstanding and ignorance that are present there, right? Like everything you just named, as you said, pre-existed the New Age movement that began in the United States in the 1960s and 70s. It's a little tiny baby movement, a blip in the spiritual history of humanity, but also most of them predate Christianity, right?
Yeah.
And everything on that list and all of them there are from specific cultural, spiritual, ethnic, national origins that are not included in her analysis because she is only seeing it through the lens of 1970s and 80s United States New Age spiritualism,
That
which
she taught.
already that she taught, that she was a leader inside of, right? There's probably not a New Age practitioner who has not at one point had a Doreen Virtue Oracle deck, right? I had 3 of them on my shelf, okay?
I have not
But
had any.
she's, you know what? I commend you because they're not that good.
Oh, they're so cute. Anyway.
But the thing is, again, she's calling out these specific things that have already been taken out of their context, stirred up together through the New Age movement, and then spit back out by white women like Doreen Virtue. And I'm pointing to myself because I am aware I am also a white woman and very much endeavor to hold these things in a different way than how I was brought up, which was very much inside of a New Age spiritual context. They've already been distorted. They've already been denuded and denatured from their original context. Mindfulness meditation already is completely misunderstood by the New Age spiritual movement, as is Reiki, as is all of these other things. Astrology exists in every culture, right, in some form, going back millennia. And again, they're already not being presented as what they actually are. And then in the form of New Age spiritualism, she's calling them out as demonic because they originate from these other cultures. So she's not bothering to understand them from the perspective of those original cultures. She's just saying that's Buddhist, that's Indian, that's, in other words, that's brown people's stuff. That's from over there, right? Never mind that Christianity originated in the Middle East. Okay, never mind that, right? The layers of like of taking these things and mutating them, and then to have the nerve to be, oh, but they're actually bad. Sorry, go ahead, Carrie.
But by whose authority? Are you saying they're bad? Are you saying they're from the devil? Who the hell knows that? Why? And it's also kind of, how did we know Yusui was enlightened? I don't know. There was this whole thing where he was inaugurated, or there was some conversation in like Nicholas Pearson's book that talks about how somebody confirmed that. I don't know how you'd confirm that, but still, it's using these hierarchical terms, and much of this realm of fundamentalist Christianity, why it is so threatened by a practice like Reiki, is because it's about finding truth within yourself. It's about empowering oneself. Whereas before, empowerment came from this religious authority, having this religious authority, living in alignment with an external religious authority. And this rules people's lives from morning to evening, right? And there's so much spiritual trauma, too, that she's really using and stirring up in order to project her message out there. And it really comes from, I don't want to speak to where it comes from, but I think it's clear why she's so threatened by something like the system of Reiki. Now, I listened to one of her interviews, and she was talking about how the symbols of the Reiki symbols, they obviously are demonic, and they talk about specific energy or whatever, and you can experience it. But if it's not a cross, then it's never a symbol that you should be looking at.
She doesn't understand that 2 of the symbols are kanji. It could be the word milk for all you care, right? It's language, and every culture has its own language. Once again, there's this thing that is only one culture is right or good. And if it's not that one culture, then it has to be evil. And there is something so black and white in that allows no nuance, no. I mean, life is not black and white. And as you said, we don't know the full details of Mikao Usui's life. Does it matter? No. But it's fun to try to find out. I'm interested in that. You don't have to be, though. But we should try to have some understanding of what it is that we're doing. Critical thinking.
Absolutely. And to think, okay, so my religion has it all figured out and every other religion is wrong, that is racism. It really is. And I think another reason why, a system of Reiki or just even the New Age spiritual movements in general are so, triggering for the fundamentalist Christian community is that it's because it's also about honoring that every single person is divine.
Yeah.
Like in yoga, every single person is divine. In Reiki, every person is a piece of the universe, right? And so there's no one wrong or right in that. There's this universality of Reiki. It's meant to be here to illuminate the truth in all religious paths, honoring the truth in all religious paths. So it's kind of fundamentally directly opposed to a really narrow, rigid point of view that's just fully about my religion or you're going to hell.
I think you really, named it correctly earlier, Carrie, when you called out the place of fear that this comes from. Yeah. And fear on so many levels. Fear of self-knowledge, fear of finding the divine within us. You talked about there being these hierarchical structures where you come to know God or Jesus through the interpretation of the clergy, right? It's not through your own investigation of the world and yourself and your heart and your spirit and your prayers and your relationship to that divine energy. I'm not speaking of all Christianity. I know many Christians who 100% are on board with meditation and self-reflection and being in a personal relationship with their concept of God and see no problem with the idea that each of us carries the divine within us and we can find it in our living bodies and in the world and in nature, right? We're not painting all Christians with a single brush. We're talking about a particular strand of Christian thought that has these particularities. I want to make that clear. But this fear of self-knowledge, this fear of, even the idea that a human could have divinity within us before we have ascended to heaven. And that, of course, is related to the fear of the body, the fear of, as you said earlier, sexuality and all of the things of the body, right? Not just sexuality, but things of intuition and knowing things through the body and feeling powerful in our bodies. One of the things she specifically mentioned in an article about yoga was pointing out with some accuracy that yoga asanas have the function of embodying divine energy, right? In reflection of deities from the Vedic tradition. She got a lot else wrong in that article, but she's naming that as explicitly demonic to embody divinity through our posture and through our mindset and through our breath and through the capacity of our bodies. And it made me sad to read that because finding these methods of feeling connected to the world through the divinity that is inside of myself, however we name that, I name it through the lens of the system of Reiki, there's lots of ways to name it, has been one of the most important things in my life. And I see that over and over and over again with people. And to fundamentally perceive that embodying divinity within a human consciousness and to have the ability to be self-reflective about that. Again, meditation, just full category, meditation as demonic. What is and defining meditation in her list as quieting the mind and observing what's happening inside of you. That's demonic? To quiet yourself, to be with yourself, to observe your own thoughts, your own feelings, your own experience of the world is demonic. I don't understand.
Yeah, I think it's also about power. I think she was in a position of power in her role as this New Age soothsayer. And then whatever happened, that she's swapped into something else. But she's still taking that mentality. And it's obviously who the person is to some degree, that they need to be in a state of power over others and telling people what they should and shouldn't think. And see, that has belonged in the New Age movement quite a bit, actually, because as you were saying earlier, Michaela, there was this thing of it being uprooted from their traditions, these elements. And are you hearing a strange sound at times? No, I think it's the devil. But anyway, I'll just.
I think it's the children playing innocently, like good little normal humans.
Anyway, but that these New Age elements have been uprooted from their cultural underpinnings, and people have tended to do things with them that they've just made up because they're not actually rooted in a culture. You could make something up and say that this was true, and someone can't really argue with that because you've made it up, right? And I think she's taken that into where she is now, and it's being played out again, just with different material, a different book, because it is a power thing over someone to say that what I am saying is fully 100% true, even though I can't prove it, but you have to believe that, and everything else is wrong. That very, like I said, black and white attitude is pretty sad. Whereas something like the system of Reiki, historically, we have a lot of information. Actually, I always say there's not that much, but there is information there. We have this memorial stone that the students wrote about him. We have recently the CV, his own personal CV, which he wrote in his own handwriting about the work experiences that he'd had in his life. We have students who have talked about his teachings. And so we have photos. We have factual elements that we can call on and work from. And these are things that I think that people who are interested in the system of Reiki should definitely be interested in and align themselves with. Then there won't be this confusion either that seems to have allowed Doreen Virtue to bring further confusion into the system of Reiki.
It's just a very hate-filled rhetoric, and it's hard to hear. And I think it even sometimes it stirs up a lot. But I guess one of the things I just love to just touch into is just spiritual trauma, so that this notion that like I can't trust my intuition, or I'm tapping into this universal energy that could be light or dark, it could mislead me, it could do something to me, it's just this really intense distrust with one's own spiritual knowing, and a serious distrust with spirit in general, right? That the system of Reiki, when we can learn to practice to liberate ourselves from worry and fear and have enough healthy experiences with it, realize that there is no external force that is trying to judge you. There's no external force that's trying to take you down and lead you down this path of sin. This is an internalized dialogue that comes from religious trauma. And I think Reiki has helped me unwind that and help me realize that's actually just fear. Fear in so many different ways. Fear of not allowing me to touch into something that actually can be a little bit fearful because it's on the other side of death. I guess one other thing I could say too is that after I got a divorce, it took me probably many years of therapy, figuring out and realizing that even if I had made mistakes in my life, I could still be a good person.
Yeah.
And that was something that my upbringing really robbed me of up until I got to that level of healing. And so I feel really grateful that I found the system of Reiki to help me heal from religious and spiritual trauma. Because it's made me a better person, and it's enriched my life.
Come on.
And it's making you a better mom, and it's making those little folks better people, right? To be able to be in that context. Yeah.
Yeah, my hopes that people can make better informed decisions about what they do and not rely on people telling them things. Rely on something like accurate information, but also your own experience, and don't get pulled in by fear, by mischaracterization. I think my thoughts on religion are that it should be about respect and love. And if it's not coming from that, I would question that for myself personally. I feel respect for different cultures and traditions is really important, and just critical thinking. What else? Anyone else got anything they'd like to add?
Yeah, I think where I want to land, it refers back to something that you mentioned earlier, which is that none of us can say what is true beyond the veil, right? Beyond in what we directly perceive with our senses. Even things we directly perceive in with our senses can be sometimes tricky to say what is actually true and what's happening, but certainly in the spiritual sense. I can't say that what I believe is true, that it's 100% accurate, that the way I understand energy and all the things is 100% true. And and I make that clear when I talk about it. And what is important to me and that I would share with others is that we each have the ability to discern what feels true to us and to choose, therefore, what we believe. And there should be enough, first of all, room in humanity for different ways of thinking. But when we are able to really be with the traditions of the world across time and across culture, we find repeated themes, we find repeated symbols, we find repeated experiences. We find much more commonality than rhetoric like this would have us believe, and probably much more commonality than difference. There is an never ceasing drive that we humans have to understand the unexplainable, which means that we go into an attempt to have an experience and to understand it and to translate it to other people. And that means that we're using our same human senses to observe the same phenomena out in the world over and over and over again. And then we're making our own decisions, our own beliefs that are rooted in culture and time and place about how we understand those experiences and those phenomena, which means that, again, things will get repeated. We'll see the same things happen over and over again. And there will be critical differences based on those times and places in which they're understood, the cultures they're in. And that is so powerful and amazing. We each get to take responsibility and have integrity for our own work to practice whatever it is we're drawn to, and then discern, does this actually feel true? Does it feel true enough? Does it make me curious enough to form beliefs around? And then to continue being in practice so that we can continue to ask that question, does this feel true? I think if we do that, we're gonna be fine. And we're not gonna be shitting all over other people's beliefs and perspectives, because we will be aware more about where they come from, and we will see those places of connection and commonality very clearly.
Yeah. Just one thing that I want to say is just that it's not about Doreen Virtue's faith.
No,
This isn't about that.
she gets to believe what feels true to her.
Absolutely.
Just don't yuck my yum, man. Reiki is super yummy. Don't yuck my yum.
I want to finish it there. That's so good. Carrie, though.
I think her bashing on yoga just makes me so bad too. And I've actually seen other people in my yoga community who've reformed after becoming a yoga instructor and now feel that they need to repent because they've, contorted people's bodies and now the devil's in them or something like that.
Oh, geez.
It's just so sad because in Hinduism, there's incredible myth and story and analogy that gives us we can't identify and cling to that as absolutely true. This is the absolute truth, but it illuminates aspects of what it is to be human. And if we're not open to seeing the humanity in every other person, then what is your spirituality? Really, what is your spirituality for? And who is it for?
Mom.
And on that adorable note.
Do like and subscribe.
That's right. If you'd like to hear more ranting from us, do stay with us.
Thank you for sharing this rant today, and we look forward to seeing you at the next one. Bye for now.